This is a special bonus episode of the Buckeyes TomOrrow Morning podcast. Sometimes, even with a daily podcast, we have too much good content. Now, in the business, that is what's called a good problem to have, but we definitely don't want it to go to waste. So today, you're going to be hearing directly from Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles and wide receivers coach Brian Hartline. We got a chance to talk with both of them this week, and they both had a lot of interesting stuff to say. So let's start with Jim Knowles, and let's start with another good problem to have. That problem is, when you score a defensive touchdown, as Ohio State has done several times recently, what kind of challenges do you face in having to go right back out there on the field, right after being on the field just one play earlier?
You can feel it. I mean, I know when I'm calling plays or, communicating downstairs, you feel like that rush and then a dropout, and it's just like I always talk about, it's just habits, they have to remember that defense is right now proposition. You got to go out and stop them. It doesn't matter what happened the play before, but it is something that, you have all your coaches kind of in their ear trying to get them to re-energize. And I think it's just human nature that it's hard to do.
Defensive tackle Tyleik Williams is starting to work his way into the rotation a little bit more. He had a very big fourth down stop against Penn State and is starting to earn more playing time. So what did Knowles see from Tyleik Williams to earn him that extra playing time?
He's got really freakish athletic ability for his size. So with Tyleik, it's been just about developing consistency in practice, so that he earns those reps and those opportunities. He's been doing that more and more in practice, and I always knew he had the ability.
Jim Knowles has talked about the fact that he's okay with the defense giving up maybe 4 or 5 big plays in a game, because that's sort of a trade-off for how they want to play and the aggressive style of defense that he wants to play. So when the defense makes a big play, scores a touchdown, creates a turnover, do the big plays that the defense makes cancel out the big plays that the defense allows?
No. They still all count, and they still all need to be dealt with. We had a few too many against Penn State, and we've dealt with them. It's never okay, but I guess you can build the positive out of it when it happens, and you're doing a lot of good other things, and you win the game. You can take it and show why it happened and how we can fix it. But it doesn't even it out. That would be like, I always thought, well, if the defense scores a touchdown, really shouldn't it come off the offense's score? You know what I mean? So it would be like, if it was if we were up 14-0 and we got a touchdown, shouldn't it be 14 to -7? You know what I mean? Like the defense always gets you get the short end of that stick, but there is no balance, and that's defense. Once you start thinking like that, that's the wrong mentality in my book. You got to win every play.
The secondary has been banged up on and off kind of all season long, and they just have never had the completely full complement of defensive backs all season long. One of the guys who's missed a bunch of time is Jordan Hancock. He was out during fall camp. He missed basically the first half of the regular season, too. So as they sort of start ramping him up towards, being full ready to go for a full game, how long, how will they know when he actually is ready to do more than he's already doing?
Yeah, the film, I mean, and you're right, it is a process. I think I haven't been a baseball coach, but it is like a pitcher. That's why they call it a pitch count, I guess, because, a guy can taper off as the game goes on if he hasn't built up that stamina. So, we're gradually increasing him and looking for more reps from him this week.
Penn State scored 31 points against the Ohio State defense, and while it's a little bit of an asterisk on the last touchdown especially, which was really a garbage time score, there were a couple times when Penn State's touchdowns came on plays where it looked like Ohio State might have had the guy dead to rights before he scored. One was that long Parker Washington touchdown, and then also that 4th and goal play where Tommy Eichenberg looked like he might have shot the gap and be in a position to take the Penn State running back down before he got across the goal line. So how do you correct for those kinds of things in the future and actually get those guys down and not allow those big plays?
You do break it down in detail. In terms of vicing the ball, it's, when we had the two guys there, and, I call it owning your hip. Like, it's okay. If you're outside and you miss, make sure he goes inside. If you're inside and you miss, make sure he goes outside. And that is not something you just, like, you don't come back that week and say, we need to start working on vice tackle, because we actually call that a drill, vice tackle. It is a defensive fundamental. Now, and we've had plenty of good ones, but when it goes wrong, you can say, okay, guys, here's vice tackle. This is why we do that drill. And then with Tommy, those plays, right. There's a roll tackle, like a single leg takedown. And those are more difficult to do when they happen quick, like that, like right on the snap. You saw him do it plenty of times on the perimeter, like when you have more time to run, where you can go in there and roll the tackle. But when it happens that fast, that's what he needed to do, and he knows that. Because if you're up too high, you could slide off. You got to be able to go low and roll, but it's just difficult to get in that position. So those are drills that we do all the time, and we show the good examples along with the ones that didn't go quite as well, so that the guys are more motivated to keep doing the drill.
But why I say, because those were 2 of the 4 touchdowns. You have them dead to rights, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, that just means we shouldn't stop practicing. Right.
When you have a player like JT Tuimoloau out, it opens up a lot of different opportunities for you as a defensive play caller, and you kind of get the sense that Jim Knowles has enjoyed having players like JT Tuimoloau out on his defense this year. But, when you're able to drop someone like him into coverage, as they did on that first interception that he had, how much does that add to your toolbox as a defensive coordinator?
Yeah, it does, and it allows you to disguise better too. Because here's a guy who could rush and be a threat, and everybody knows how good of a rusher he is. And now he's a guy who can drop into coverage and actually make plays. I think people drop D linemen a lot, but they don't make a lot of plays. You do it maybe just to cloud up a window or give the quarterback a different look, but we've got guys who can actually make plays, and he showed that.
We know you guys always love these sort of inside football, questions and, what's really going on, in the places and that we can't see or we can't hear during a game. And this was a great question from Tony Gerderman. What is going on in the headsets when you see a guy like JT Tuimoloau make a really wow play? Are the coaches just screaming in the headsets, or is everyone going nuts? What's really going on those headsets in those moments? It's
really pretty quiet, because everybody puts their, when you put your microphone up, so because when you're a play caller, you really need that quiet, so you don't hear the field, so it's really pretty quiet. I'm sure they're all down there celebrating and going crazy, and that's what they should do. I enjoy it for about 3 seconds, and then I have to start thinking about, okay, we got to get back on the field and what, the chess match and what's the next play is going to be. So the players and the coaches on the field get to enjoy it, but upstairs it's on to the next play.
Now, on the other side of the ball, we got a chance to talk to Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach. The wide receivers have been very productive this season again, despite the fact that Jaxon Smith-Njigba has missed virtually the entire season, and also despite the fact that the 4 true freshman wide receivers really haven't played a whole lot so far. So Hartline was asked about those guys. How are they coming along? Are there guys right on the cusp of playing, or is it a little further away?
They're doing well. I think that I think as of late they're beginning more and more momentum. They need to step up. Yeah, I think their continual growth. I think the biggest thing with those guys is just really seeing the guys around them that they're surrounded by, and continue to buy in and continue to improve. That's definitely happening. I think a couple guys are really starting to kind of come out of that group, in my opinion. So that being said, there's a lot of football left, and what they do over the next 2 months will be critical for them going into next spring. And I have a pretty good feel about where they're at and where they're going. I think they're starting to, sharpen their teeth a little bit on special teams, and that's been important. Always has been here. So for them to continue to do that, I think that'll be a good starting point for them.
Another guy who took a little while to get on the field, but who is really making the most of his opportunities now is Julian Fleming. He hit a bunch of setbacks health-wise along the way in his first couple years on the campus at Ohio State. But now, how is his development coming along now that he's finally healthy and able to play?
Yeah, Julian has done a great job, as you guys have seen. So, I think that he's got to continue to progress. I think, the one thing he'd probably say is he's gotten so much better, but there's a difference between getting better in the practice field and then taking that to the game and applying it to the game. And then the amount of reps you get on game day, just that body of work builds. And so, once you get to a point where you can do it, then the conversation becomes how often. And I think that he's continuing to grow in that facet. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. You guys all see it. But the more and more opportunities he gets, and the more plays he makes, the more momentum he's going to continue to build. And he's only scratching the surface. What he's capable of, I'm not even sure I know what he's capable of, because he's so athletic. He works so hard. And there's really not much he can't do. He's got to continue to stay healthy. He's doing a great job with that. But I think the sky's the limit for him.
With the health of the wide receivers being a little bit of a question this year, especially with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, how important is it for Hartline to get guys beyond the top three? You've got Marvin Harrison Jr., you've got Emeka Egbuka, you've got Julian Fleming. There's obviously a high level of confidence in those three guys. How important is it to get guys beyond those top three, a role kind of every week moving forward, so they have more proven depth in case Jaxon Smith-Njigba can't come back?
I would say that the development happens more during the week than it does on Saturdays, in my opinion. But that being said, I think it's really important to have multiple guys being available, and I think that we have that. And I think that for Jaden Ballard to step in, for Xavier Johnson to step in when roles are needed, it's really critical. Just as it's important for Cade Stover and G. Scott in the tight end room to step in. In the slot or inside as well. So we do a lot of things throughout the week, not necessarily maybe on Saturdays, but I'd say the ammunition and what we have, availability to us is being built throughout the week.
With Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson off to the NFL and Jaxon Smith-Njigba playing just really a handful of snaps throughout the course of the year, that's put the younger guys really on center stage a little earlier than you thought they might be. So what has Hartline liked and not liked about what he's seen out of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka this season?
I think it's a lot to like. I would say that, they hold themselves to a standard that's higher than we probably try to hold them to. And for them, they would probably tell you that they expected nothing different. And a lot of the reasons why they're where they're at is because probably that expectation. And I think it's not an unrealistic expectation. It's an earned expectation. I think they've proven to themselves over time through practice, to their peers, that the way they're playing now reflects how they practice and how they work, along with Julian. So, I'd say that, it's a lot of credit to the room and the guys that choose the room and the guys that develop and push each other, and the success they're having is, carrying the torch that Chris and Garrett then carried from the guys before them. So, not to shrug it off or not highlight it, but that's kind of the expectation and standard they've developed, and they're just trying to carry the torch.
Hartline was asked for an update on Jaxon Smith-Njigba's status and his level of confidence that JSN will be back at some point this season.
Yeah, he's beating himself up a little bit. He's been better this week, I'll say that. I think I could echo what he's saying on, if he was here standing in front. He wants to play it in the worst way, and he's frustrated. That being said, he's done a great job not being a distraction and picking the guys up and staying locked in and FaceTiming before the game on Saturday. Like, all those things have been awesome. And but I know as a competitor, he's frustrated and he wants to get back. But I think overall, he's doing okay.
Level of confidence he'll be back by, let's say, when it really matters.
Huge level of confidence.
Ohio State at one point on Saturday was trailing Penn State with about 9 minutes left in the game, and the Ohio State offense went right down the field, scored a touchdown in 3 plays, got another touchdown the next drive, and really just made the most of some really big moments. But there's a lot of trust that goes into being able to execute on the road in a hostile environment in a big moment like that. So how does a quarterback like C.J. Stroud and a receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr. build that trust so that they can make those big plays in those big moments?
I think trust is just the body of work. It's not necessarily, this particular route. I mean, they spend a lot of time doing things, but I guess, my point of view would just be the overall trust. And then to be able to communicate that on the sideline, lock eyes, understand you're good. Yeah, I'm good. Then you execute. And I think that they've done a great job with that. I mean, they're pros. And, sometimes that's just things you can teach it, but that's just earned and not only earned from themselves, but us. I mean, it's just everything. There's so much that goes into that. But that being said, those are some great plays by two great players. And having that is probably important to getting to where we want to get to.
There are a lot of things you can ask Brian Hartline that will make him smile. It's a pretty good time to be Brian Hartline, it seems like, with a very talented group of wide receivers now, a very talented group of wide receivers coming in the next recruiting class, a very talented group of wide receivers who have left his room and are now doing big things on Sundays in the NFL. But one thing that you can always get a good smile from out of Brian Hartline is asking him about Marvin Harrison Jr., and specifically Marvin Harrison Jr.'s work ethic. Is that work ethic up to the standard of the NFL? Here's an interesting answer.
I mean, just call it what it is. It's beyond professional. I mean, there's a lot of professionals that never worked like him. And frankly, there's a lot of guys in our room that works better than pros do. I mean, that's just is what it is. But, I think that the goal isn't always just getting there. It's staying there and playing for a long time, and everything these guys embody are giving themselves the best chance. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, there's levels to goals, and I think our guys across the board have different levels to goals than we even talk about. I mean, the NFL, is awesome and all, but they're first focused on their team. They're first focused on making the play when it shows up. Then then maybe it's the NFL, and then it's lasting in the NFL for a long time. So the pro comparison is good, but these guys have overachieved that from a work ethic standpoint. So that's, in my mind, nominal.
Brian Hartline is known as a fantastic recruiter, and he seems to bring in a handful of 5 stars or very, very high 4 stars pretty much every season at this point. So how do you recruit to the culture of the wide receiver room? We've heard all about Zone 6 and the selflessness that's required and guys being happy for each other and all that kind of stuff. What is a normal amount of time before these recruits come in and really get it, understand what that culture is? And, or is there a big difference between people? Do some guys get it right away? Some guys don't. But how long does it take for guys to really get up to speed with what it means to be in that wide receiver room?
Definitely by the person. But, and it's not just here. I would say it's probably everywhere. I think that the expectations have continually been sped up. How would Terry McLaurin have fit into that expectation this day and age? I don't even know. Or Paris Campbell, or guys that are very vastly successful now, but maybe weren't by some standards, especially in this room right now, of where they're supposed to be by their end of their freshman year. Like, oh, we're not seeing the freshmen playing as that like what? I literally see you guys write that. So that's mind blowing to me. So I would say it's definitely by person. Like we talk all the time, right? There's goals and there's paths, and everyone shares goals and probably never shares paths. So Curtis Samuel's path is not Terry McLaurin's, but they were roommates. But I think that, it is indicative of the individual. I think, Jaden Ballard's doing a great job, but on his own path. Then maybe a Mech and Marv that were in the same class. JB is doing a great job. And so is Marvin Mech, but just different. And not right, not wrong. But I think to answer your question more decisively, probably, you see that you turn the corner probably into their second year, more consistently towards the end of their freshman year. You kind of see it, whether it shows up on Saturday or not. You don't know. But I would say into the second year, your second spring, you kind of see some plays being made and things happening, and you're like, okay, we have a good future here.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was, again, just sort of a special bonus episode. We will still have our normal episode for Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning coming up a little later on tonight. We had our usual episode yesterday. This is just a little extra content for you because it is November. It is getting into the heart of college football season, and there's plenty to talk about. So it probably will not be the last bonus episode we do this month, but hope you guys enjoyed that one. We will also have a new episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast coming out Thursday. That'll be our bold predictions episode. We'll have our game preview episode coming up on Friday. Lots of content. And then, of course, Kevin and Tony and I on our way to Evanston on Friday to cover the Ohio State Northwestern game. We'll have all the usual pregame coverage, postgame coverage, live, the full live postgame show at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And then, of course, all the coverage all day, all week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today to become a member. It is a fantastic site, a really fun community. And honestly, there's going to be a lot to talk about there over the next few weeks as we count down the days to the Michigan game and potentially some rather significant games after that as well. That will do it for today. That will do it for at least for right now. We will talk to you guys a little later on.